There was an extremely expensive handbag on the seat on the subway. When there was no one around, Frances immediately picked it up gently. However, she didn't want to possess it at all. She just wanted to not let bad people steal that handbag. Frances originally wanted to return the handbag to the person who lost it. But then she discovered that the staff at the train station had all left work. With no other choice, she just had to take it home. When seeing that handbag, Frances' best friend, Erica, got very excited. She wanted to see what was inside the rich woman's bag. So she ignored Frances's objection to open it. As a result, there was only one ID card inside. Could it be that its owner intentionally put it in? The next day, Frances immediately went to the address on the ID card. Its owner was a very fashionable elderly woman named Greta. She didn't seem to notice the lost bag. She also enthusiastically invited Frances into her house for coffee. Although Frances felt a bit strange, she still went inside. When just sitting down, Frances heard the sound of knocking on wooden planks. Greta hastily explained that it was because the house next door was repairing. After saying that, she stood up and shouted at the wall next to her. The sound immediately disappeared. Seeing that, Frances was also less worried, and also happily talked to Greta. Greta told Frances her husband had passed away. Her daughter was studying in Paris. So she was alone in this big house, and she felt very lonely. After hearing that, Frances got a little emotional, because she also lived alone in New York. Although she had a close friend, she often felt lonely. They felt like they got along pretty well. Frances seemed to have found her mother's figure on Greta. A few days later, Frances came to Greta's house every day. This made Erica feel like something was wrong. She kindly reminded Frances not to trust strangers. But Frances didn't listen, and went to Greta's house to have dinner alone. At this time, Greta asked Frances to go to the cupboard and get her a candle. Originally, this was a very common thing. But as soon as Frances opened the cupboard, she was dumbfounded. There were many designer bags like the one she picked up on the subway. Each bag had a name on it, one of which was her name. Frances was extremely scared. Could these bags be intentionally left on the subway by Greta as bait? Her purpose was to lure honest people like Frances. Then she would do perverted things. At this point, Frances wasn't in the mood to eat anymore. She used the excuse of being in a bad mood to quickly leave Greta's house. After that, Frances told all this to her best friend. After hearing this, Erica was very supportive, and didn't want her to go to Greta's house anymore. However, things weren't so simple. The second day, after Frances didn't care about Greta, she immediately received numerous harassing messages from Greta. When seeing that Frances was still ignoring, Greta immediately went to the restaurant where Frances was working. This made Frances unbearable. She told Greta that she had seen the bags in her cupboard, and also told Greta to stop pretending. After saying that, she turned to leave. Frances thought she was able to escape Greta's pursuit, but she didn't know that Greta was extremely perverted. The more Frances resisted, the more Greta would be interested. This woman was indeed a pervert. She deliberately left her branded handbag on the seat of the subway. After picking it up, passers-by would bring it to her house to return. She would take the opportunity to trick that person into the house. After that, she would do perverted things. Fortunately, Frances discovered Greta's scheme in time. She warned Greta not to disturb her anymore. But Greta said that because her husband died, her daughter was in Paris. She felt so lonely. Because of that, she came up with this way to get to know some kind people. Greta also hoped Frances wouldn't misunderstand. After hearing that, Frances was still extremely angry. She said Greta was mentally ill. She then cut off all contact with Greta. However, Greta didn't give up her intention. Greta said sweet words and even said that she was missing Frances, and promised she would take care of Frances. But Frances still didn't pay any attention to her. After that, she stood like a statue all day in front of the restaurant where Frances worked. This made Frances extremely scared. She immediately called the police. But the police said they also had no way, because Greta also didn't threaten Frances. With no other choice, Frances could only avoid her. Until one day she couldn't take it anymore. Once again, she warned Greta to stay away from her. Unexpectedly, Greta approached her arrogantly. "Didn't you say you'll stay with me forever? Why have you changed your mind?" After saying that, she directly spit the gum on Frances' hair. This made Frances even more certain that Greta was mentally ill. To know the true situation of Greta, Frances surreptitiously went to Greta's house to rummage through the trash. As a result, Frances found a letter from Greta's daughter. So Frances immediately called Greta's daughter, in the hope that she could advise her perverted mother. But unexpectedly, the person who answered the phone was her daughter's psychological counselor. Frances knew that Greta's daughter actually committed suicide 4 years ago. The reason was because Greta had a serious mental illness. She often locked her daughter in a wooden crate. After hearing that, Frances felt extremely panicked. After that, the terrible things still continued to happen to Frances. That day, Greta sent Frances a picture of Erica at the bar. Frances felt the situation was in danger and immediately called Erica. Frances told Erica that Greta was near her, and also reminded her to be careful. Hearing that, Erica was also extremely scared and immediately left the bar. After returning home, Erica came up with an idea for Frances. She told Frances to take the initiative to find Greta and apologize, and then told Greta that Frances would be traveling for a while. After being unable to contact Frances for a while, Greta would definitely find a new target. Frances felt that this idea wasn't bad. So the next day she actually came to Greta to apologize. But she couldn't believe that she had underestimated a mental patient like Greta. Greta knew that Frances was lying. After that, while Erica wasn't at home, Greta immediately made Frances faint and brought her home. In a blur, Frances saw Greta open the door behind the piano, and then put Frances in the big wooden box in the room. When waking up, she discovered that the door was closed. She saw a picture of a strange girl on the table. She thought this girl was most likely murdered. Frances indignantly slammed the chair against the door. However, it wasn't helpful either. Meanwhile, Greta didn't want Frances' family to find out she was missing. So she used Frances's phone to send messages to her father and best friend Erica in turn. Greta wanted them to misunderstand that Frances was going out with her lover. Until a few days later, Frances' father came to see Erica's house. The two of them just discovered an abnormality. Frances' father was extremely worried about her. So he found a detective to investigate his daughter's location. This detective was really capable. He quickly found Greta. Greta looked scary. Every day, she put 3 drops of unknown medicine into Frances's milk. Then she forced Frances to drink it all. If Frances didn't drink, Greta would lock her in a wooden box. With no other choice, Frances could only do it. Greta also seemed to be extremely pleased with this daughter Frances. She taught Frances to play the piano and slept with her. But Greta didn't know that Frances was actually pretending. That day, while Greta wasn't paying attention, Frances found an opportunity to knock Greta out with a pestle. Then she quickly ran away. However, Greta was an extremely scary person. Greta had a precaution about this, so she locked the door. Frances was so scared that she just ran down to the basement. As a result, Frances saw the body of Greta's daughter, who was murdered by Greta. Frances was extremely scared. At this moment, Greta woke up and gently appeared behind Frances. She used anesthetic to knock Frances unconscious. In order not to make any mistakes, this time, Greta tied Frances to the bed. At the same time, the detective also came to Greta's house. Frances heard their conversation, so she started to struggle. She wanted to attract the detective's attention. The detective also noticed the sound behind the piano. He slowly moved the piano. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Greta took the needle and gently walked behind him. She stabbed him with a needle that made him faint. Greta was extremely cruel. She shot the detective dead. This made Frances extremely desperate. She thought that this time she would definitely die. But Greta also seemed to let go of Frances and started looking for new target. She also used the same bag and put it in the same position. This time, the person who picked up the bag was a girl with short brown hair. She was like Frances. She also came to Greta's house. Greta enthusiastically invited her into the house. The girl also didn't refuse. The two of them drank coffee and talked all day. Suddenly, Greta felt uncomfortable and fell to the floor. It turned out this girl was Frances' best friend Erica. She was in the subway looking for that bag for a long time. When hearing Erica's voice, Frances also started to struggle. Erica followed the sound to find Frances. The two hugged each other tightly. After that, they locked Greta in a wooden box and waited for the police to arrive. After watching this movie, I thought we absolutely must not trust strangers. Actually, Frances was still lucky. But in reality, it will be 10,000 times scarier. The movie comes here. Thanks for watching.